they don't function as well. If your proteins don't function well, you don't get good DNA delivery of new proteins, neurotransmitters that you need to be healthy. And the sugar actually goes into cells, inside of cells. Anyone ever hear of peripheral neuropathy? Anyone in this room have that? Okay. Got a couple people with that. People with diabetes, one of the biggest causes for peripheral neuropathy. It just means from the toes on up, it's ascending, and the fingers on up start to lose their ability to touch normally. So often people feel like they have tingling or burning, and after it becomes very progressed, people cannot actually feel the ground they're stepping on. So in very severe cases, people can't walk with that. That's all insulin creating a lot of that because of the sugar. What happens when the sugar goes into a cell? It's hyperosmolar, meaning it has a lot of little particles in it, and the fluid outside of the cells goes dragged into the cells and expands them and destroys them. So the nerves, which are all the way from the brain, all the way out through the spinal cord, down the arms. So the nerves that come down from the neck go all the way to your fingertips. The ones from your spine go all the way down to your toes, pretty long. The more sugar you put in your system, the more destruction of those nerves there is. And when I have a guy who comes in with type 2 diabetes, they say, what's wrong with this? I'm doing fine, I'm taking medicine. At the same point, there's enough sugar in their system that's going to cause erectile dysfunction. Call that a peripheral neuropathy if you want. But you lose sensation in the penis and they lose that. That'll wake them up. Because there's not a guy I have met yet that wants to lose that function. Cut off his hand, it's okay. Same thing happens with women. Men and women are the same, just different amounts of different things. I was reading a great article today, Moodiness in Men. I liked that, because you always, the classical thing is women are moody, men are deniers. Well, that's not true. And the study showed that the moodier a man was, the lower his testosterone was. Okay. So when we talk about menopause, we always think about wacky women, right? But andropause, men get it the same way. It's just not all of a sudden where the ovaries just kind of poop out. The testicles kind of poop out over time. But men get the same way. And there's all kinds of studies showing that men actually have cycles like women do too. That's another lecture. That'll be a fun one, won't it? Sex education 101. This is another thing. Sugar actually decreases the ability of our white cells in our body to actually attack foreign antigens, bacteria, virus, things like that. After a small load of sugar, the white blood cells actually become inactivated. They don't move. Normally they kind of meander around and go and kill. But after a sugar load, they actually stop what they're doing. I think it's for like an hour or something like that. They just shut down. So in this cold season, do your best, stay away from sugar if you want to stay healthy. Sugar cravings, it's different than general hunger. It's usually a rebound. So when we eat those foods that create a biochemical chain reaction that leads to a temporary increase in serotonin levels, that feels great. So serotonin is the feel-good neurotransmitter in the brain. It's the one that puts us to sleep. It's the one that turns on when we're eating chocolate. It's the one that all the good stuff makes us feel good about. So it helps you feel relaxed, less anxious and stressed, and improves your mood. When it's low, a lot of people have low serotonin as they age. What do they do to try to fulfill that same feeling? Sugar. But it works against us. Look at this poor guy. So if you're struggling with an overwhelming craving for certain trigger foods, high in sugar and carbs, you may be low in the important feel-good brain chemical serotonin. Now there's a big push years ago to take St. John's wort. And everyone was taking that for a while. I don't know why it kind of fell out of disfavor. It's not as popular. But what it did was it stimulated along the chain to get to serotonin stimulation. It worked very well instead of antidepressant medication. I think this dog needs a girlfriend. So what do we have with sugar intake? Tooth decay, obesity, nutritional deficiency, because we're getting our calories, we're filling up on the sugar, and we're not getting the things we need, the proteins, the vegetables, whatnot. Hypoglycemia, we have sugar and we go, I feel great, but then the insulin comes up, knocks the sugar down to get into the cells, and you feel very terrible. And that's a cycle all day long, trying to refeed that. Immune dysfunction, white blood cells aren't functioning. Menstrual irregularities and PMS. Yeast overgrowth. Yeast thrives on sugar. There's a great detox for yeast overgrowth that I've been using in my office for quite some time. And we use undocinoic acid and a very good probiotic and a strong vitamin C. And that'll literally knock the yeast out of you. When the yeast is gone, it's one of the greatest cleanses a person can go through. A lot of the things they have, whatever it is, just seem to go away. Bacteria lives on sugar too. What do we get from it? Hyperactivity? Alcoholism. Interesting. Mood swings, of course. Heart disease, because the insulin's up, raises inflammation. Heart disease is an inflammatory disease. What we want to do with your medication, if we cannot get you off of it, is use natural supplementation, nutrition, exercise to at least lower the dose of what you're taking. Okay, so things like that would be blood pressure medication, statin drugs, things that we can have lifestyle changes that will overcome the problems that are associated with the drugs needed for it. Many of the people that come in that are in the elderly range, I'm elderly, by the way. I mean, it's pretty funny. If you look up the definition, it's 60 years and older. I think that definition was made about 60 years ago. So I think it's funny to be elderly. But elderly people often come in with, sometimes 15 different medications. And maybe 3 or 4 or 5 of them are medications they're taking to counteract the first medications they had to take. So that's a pretty sad state. A good example is blood pressure medications can dilate the blood vessels and cause erectile dysfunction. So what does a guy take then? Viagra, right? Cialis, Levitra. It's too bad. What can you do to lower blood pressure? You can do natural diuretics, taurine, magnesium, things like that. Exercise. If anybody can run, they can usually lower their blood pressure quite a bit because the baroreceptors in the carotid arteries start pumping and they reduce all the blood vessels to relax us. Very easy thing to do. The cholesterol issue we've talked about before, which is very simple. Many people are on cholesterol drugs that don't need to be on them at all because doctors are just doing a knee-jerk reaction of everybody should be on a statin drug. It's the biggest selling medicine in the world, I think, right now. How do you lower your cholesterol? Lower your sugar. Get that toxin out of your system. Your cholesterol is going to go right down. Your triglycerides are going to go right down. How many people in this room have high cholesterol? Okay, not too many. Any people here are on a statin drug? Okay, not much. This is a very, very cool group. How about people on red yeast rice?
On what?
Red yeast rice. We have 1, 2. Okay. That's no different than a statin drug, I want to tell you that. Same process. The statin drug company actually sued health food companies to stop the production of red yeast rice because the same thing. They didn't win because the same thing. They can't block a natural product. Sleep aids. How many people take sleeping pills in this room? We got a few. So we can do things like taurine, GABA, 5-HTP, tryptophan, those all help sleep. Going to sleep early helps sleep. It seems that our system revs up around 10 o'clock at night. Then once you get to that point, you want to stay up longer and then you're beat the next day.